Welcome to my channel.
I returned from Germany 3 weeks earlier than planned. I didn't tell anyone. Not my wife. Not my son. Not even the staff at the small logistics company my family runs outside Chicago, Illinois. After 30 years building that business, I had learned one important lesson. Sometimes the best way to understand what's really happening is to arrive without warning. So that afternoon I quietly unlocked the front door of my own house. And the moment I stepped inside, I froze. In the middle of the living room, my wife Linda was on her knees. Not sitting. Not praying. Kneeling. Her hands rested on the carpet while my daughter-in-law, Ashley, stood over her with a piece of paper. Ashley was calmly reading something from the page. "Breakfast must be ready by 6:30, she said coldly. "Laundry on Mondays and Thursdays. Floors cleaned every evening." My chest tightened. Linda didn't notice me at first. She just nodded quietly. "Yes, Ashley." My heart slammed against my ribs. This was my house. My wife had lived here for 27 years. And somehow, she was kneeling in front of my son's wife like a servant. Then Ashley said something that made my blood run cold. "And remember, if you argue again, I'll make sure your husband never comes back." At that moment, Ashley finally noticed me standing in the doorway. Ashley's voice stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes lifted slowly from the paper in her hand, and locked onto me standing in the doorway. For a moment, nobody moved. My wife Linda turned her head, confused by Ashley's sudden silence. When she saw me, the color drained from her face. "Robert?" she whispered. The paper slipped from Ashley's fingers. I didn't say a word. I just stepped further into the living room, closing the door quietly behind me. In 30 years of marriage, I had seen my wife laugh, cry, argue, and celebrate. But I had never seen the look she had on her face now. It was the look of someone who had been caught doing something she wasn't allowed to do. "Stand up," I said calmly. Linda hesitated. That hesitation was the first thing that made the anger in my chest turn into something colder. "I said stand up," I repeated. Slowly she rose to her feet. Ashley cleared her throat, trying to recover her confidence. "Robert, you're back early," she said carefully. I looked at her, then at the sheet of paper lying on the floor. "Would someone like to explain," I asked quietly, "why my wife was kneeling in my living room?" Ashley crossed her arms. "You should ask her," she said coldly. Then she added something that made the situation even stranger. "She agreed to it. She agreed to it." Ashley said the words calmly, like she was explaining something perfectly reasonable. I looked at Linda. My wife avoided my eyes. "Linda," I said quietly, "what is she talking about?" For several seconds she didn't answer. Then she whispered, "It's temporary. Temporary." The word echoed in my head like a bad joke. Ashley stepped forward and picked the paper up from the floor. "It's called structure," she said, brushing imaginary dust from the page. "Your wife offered to help around the house since I've been managing everything while you've been overseas." "Managing everything?" I repeated. Ashley gave a small shrug. "Well, someone had to," she said. "Your son works long hours now." Something in the way she said it made my stomach tighten. "Where is Daniel?" I asked. Ashley's lips curled into a faint smile. "At work." But Linda suddenly spoke again, her voice shaking. "He doesn't know about this." The room went silent. Ashley slowly turned her head toward Linda. "What did you just say?" she asked quietly. Linda's hands began trembling. "I said Daniel doesn't know," she repeated. Ashley's expression hardened instantly. Then she looked at me, and something in her voice changed. "Actually," she said calmly, "that's not entirely true." My chest tightened. "Because your son knows exactly what's happening here." The words hit me harder than I expected. "My son knows?" I repeated slowly. Ashley nodded like she had just confirmed something obvious. "Of course he does," she said. This was his idea. For a moment the room felt smaller, like the air had suddenly thickened. Daniel, my own son. The boy I had raised, the one who used to follow me around job sites wearing a tiny hard hat and asking 1,000 questions. "That's impossible," I said quietly. Ashley tilted her head slightly. "You should really talk to him about it," she replied. "He's the one who suggested your wife needed discipline." The word made my stomach turn. I looked at Linda again. Tears were forming in her eyes now. "Linda," I said, my voice lower than before, "tell me the truth." She swallowed hard. "Daniel said, if I didn't cooperate he and Ashley would move out and cut us off from our grandson." My chest tightened. Our grandson. The little boy Linda babysat almost every day. Ashley crossed her arms again, clearly irritated. It wasn't a threat, she said sharply. It was a boundary. But something about the way she said it made me realize something important. Ashley wasn't afraid of me, which meant she believed something that made her feel completely safe. Then she said the sentence that finally explained everything. You've been gone a lot lately, Robert. Her smile widened slightly. And while you were gone, things changed. Things changed? I repeated the words slowly, studying Ashley's face. She gave a small shrug like the situation was perfectly ordinary. Well, when someone disappears overseas for months at a time, the rest of the family has to adapt, she said. Something about the confidence in her voice didn't sit right with me. I turned toward Linda again. How long has this been happening? I asked. 3 weeks, she whispered. 3 weeks. The same amount of time I had been working in Germany finishing the final deal for our company's expansion. Ashley tapped the paper in her hand impatiently. Robert, this drama isn't necessary, she said. Your wife agreed to a few house rules. That's all. House rules. In my own home. I walked slowly across the living room and picked the sheet of paper from her hand. The moment my eyes scanned the page, my stomach dropped. Because the bottom of the document had something printed under the rules. A signature line. Not just one. Two. One said Linda Carter. And the other said Robert Carter, property owner. Ashley folded her arms confidently. You signed the agreement before you left, she said. I looked at the name written under mine. Then I looked up at her. No, I said quietly. I didn't. No, I repeated calmly. I didn't sign this. Ashley didn't look worried. In fact, she smiled slightly like she had been expecting me to say that. Robert, the signature is right there, she said, pointing to the bottom of the page. You signed the property management agreement before you left for Germany. Property management agreement. I looked closer at the paper. The document claimed that I had temporarily transferred household authority to Daniel and Ashley while I was overseas. Which meant, legally they could set rules for the house. But something about the signature bothered me. I had signed thousands of documents over the years running my company. Contracts, loans, permits. And I knew my own handwriting better than anyone. I held the paper up to the light. Then I laughed quietly. Ashley frowned. What's funny? She asked. I lowered the document slowly. The fact that whoever forged this, I said, tapping the signature line, forgot one small detail. Ashley's confidence flickered for the first time. What detail? I met her eyes. My legal signature doesn't say Robert Carter. I paused. It says R.J. Carter. The room went silent. Then Linda whispered something that made Ashley's face lose all color. And Robert records every legal document connected to the house. Ashley blinked. What? Ashley stared at me, her confidence finally cracking. What do you mean you record every document? She asked. I walked calmly to the side table near the living room wall and opened the drawer. Inside was a thin black folder. I pulled out a single sheet of paper and placed it on the coffee table. This, I said quietly, is the real property authority document. Ashley leaned forward. Linda looked at it too. At the bottom of the page was my real signature. R.J. Carter. But that wasn't the important part. Ashley's eyes moved down the page. And suddenly widened. Because directly underneath my signature were 2 additional lines. One read, any forged legal document connected to this property will trigger an automatic fraud investigation. The second line was even worse. All documents related to this property are digitally verified and archived by my company's legal department. Ashley's face went pale. You're bluffing, she said. But at that exact moment the front door opened. Footsteps entered the house. My son Daniel walked into the living room. Behind him were 2 police officers. Daniel looked straight at Ashley. Then he said quietly, actually, he isn't bluffing. Ashley turned slowly toward the doorway. My son Daniel stood there, pale and tense, while 2 police officers stepped into the living room behind him. For the first time since I walked in, Ashley looked genuinely nervous. Daniel, what is this? She asked quickly. Daniel didn't answer her. He looked at the forged document still sitting on the coffee table, then at me. Dad, when did you get back? He asked quietly. About 20 minutes ago, I said. The room went silent again. One of the officers stepped forward and picked up the paper Ashley had been holding earlier. This the document? He asked. I nodded. Ashley suddenly shook her head. This is ridiculous, she said. It's just a misunderstanding. But the officer was already comparing the signatures. His expression hardened. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "forging a legal property document is considered fraud in the state of Illinois." Ashley's face turned white. She looked at Daniel desperately. "Say something," she whispered. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Then he stepped aside as the officer reached for Ashley's wrists. Later that evening, after the house was quiet again, Linda sat beside me in the living room. Neither of us said much. But one thing was very clear. Sometimes people believe they've taken control of your life. Until the moment the door opens. And you walk back in.